Maybe we can
I've
get
seen
some.
this
Maybe we can
sponsor.
get some
I'm
advertising.
wearing a Star Wars shirt. Oh,
Yes, sponsor.
all right.
Yeah,
Ready when you guys are.
yeah. All right, cool.
Countdown.
Let's see. Yeah, do the 20 seconds.
Yep, that was when to start.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry. I just did my thing. And three, two, one, go. Hello, and welcome to the Static Boy Podcast. I'm Jess Chadwick,
I'm Todd Slater.
And I'm Chris Gomez.
and we are your hosts. It's been a few months since we had a show, but we're
Yep.
back in the game. It's summertime, right? So we're taking vacations and whatnot. I've actually been really busy lately with Tech Bash, so we're creating a new conference in the Philadelphia, New York region. It's actually hosted in the Poconos, so it's the Kalahari Resort. It's a new water park resort. So a lot of people might be familiar with the one out in Ohio, in Sandusky, Ohio. There's also a conference that they hold out here. So this is a brand new one in the Poconos, and we're setting up our own conference. So I've been trying
Yeah.
to organize that. So we are right now. Tickets are on sale. We got a lot of great sessions, a lot of great speakers, and if you go to techbash.com, go check it out and see if it's something you're interested in.
Yeah, look at that. Speakers right on the front page, too.
Yeah, we got our whole list of speakers. We got our keynote is Pete Brown. Glenn Block is doing the closing keynote. We got a bunch of people from Microsoft, somebody from the Aurelia core team. A lot of great speakers. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it looks great. And yeah, and so that's in September, right? Last week of September.
Last week of September, September 28th to the 30th, and the tickets are $399, and we're actually getting discounted prices on the room, so $159 per night for the room, and it actually comes with a free ticket to the water park for I think everybody in the room. At least it was when I went. So my whole family for that 159 got free tickets to the water park. So bring your family, have a lot of fun, have some cool dev geek chat
Discussions.
during the day, yeah, and then go have some fun with your family at night in the water park. So
Cool.
enough about that. The other thing that's new, as we were on vacation and setting up conferences, is is that .NET Core has finally been released. ASP.NET Core, .NET Core, all of this new stuff. 1.0 finally RTM'd, right?
That only
So
took like 2 years, right?
yeah,
Or a
that's
year and a half, or something like that.
Yeah, a
there are
lot
a
of
lot,
bumps along the way, right?
of bumps, a lot of beta versions, and the three of us were kind of talking before the show started about our history and stuff, and we make a lot of references, a lot of callbacks to, well, at least that's how it was last year, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
like, frankly, because we've been keeping up with this, it's very difficult to kind of keep track. And honestly, as I'm sure will kind of come out in this discussion, there's a lot of things that I'm pretty negative about in the framework, and I think some of it really derives from the fact that I got really frustrated in those beta versions and the changes between them, which, it isn't that fair. That's all beta versions of all frameworks are going to have those kind of bumps. But I think they went through a lot of dev cycles to really get what they thought was right, and I think that every cycle they did improve. They weren't just changing stuff just to change it.
Yeah. It was interesting to see them doing it, right? I mean, this is really the first time
Doing it in the
it's been
open.
this much open,
Yep.
and I think that says something about where Microsoft is going. But it
Yep.
also says something about, like, I mean, a lot of this was driven by the web stuff. Web is always a constant changing thing, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if they had rushed out the first version they were done a year and a half ago, by now it would be obsolete. It wouldn't be the right thing. So it's going to be interesting to see now that it's a full thing that's out there. It's on GitHub. As people start adopting it, will the next cycle will we see that same change, or is it going to be more of a evolution now than a revolution? You know,
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
Well, there
interesting to see where
were
things go.
yeah, there were a lot of things that all came together at once, right? And I feel like this came out of the ASP.NET team. Remember when they called it Project K?
Yep.
And And so when they talk about it, when they look back in their announcement blog post, they say that several years ago, some customers started asking about .NET on Linux, and about the same time, they were talking to the Windows Server team about Windows Nano, which you don't hear a whole lot about, but this Nano server, this 500 megabyte or so blue footprint server is coming. And all together, they said, well, how are we going to support all this stuff? And then a lot of things happened, right? Like this definitely seemed like it was coming out of the ASP.NET team with things like DNX, the .NET execution engine, which was sort of this little .NET that you could either ship side by side or you could install. And then after RC1, the decision was made, well, now that there's a .NET Core team, and they got some of those old names from .NET, they're working their way up building .NET Core, so maybe we should all be using the same platform. And that caused a lot of the pain, because people said, oh, but you said it was an RC. Totally understandable, right? Like RC is supposed to mean we're almost done. Like this is what it's going to look like. And really it was like, no, we're going to shift gears and re-platform on top of DOT, NET execution.
Yeah.
It's hard to say like .NET now, right? Because
what does it mean, right? So I look at it this way. Thinking about it, I'd rather have had them do that now than like a year from now have them do that.
Oh, sure.
Then it would have been like, this is a whole new thing again, or I got to learn more stuff.
It would have been like the whole new thing all over again.
So I think what's really important, and I've heard this a lot, and it's sort of my opinion too. While this has the .NET name and the lineage of .NET, in many ways, it's a new thing, right? I mean, as a developer, I kind of approach things very like the same way. I use Visual Studio and stuff, but it is really a different runtime, and that's really the way you should think of it. You shouldn't necessarily think of them necessarily as being like .NET merged into .NET Core. No, these are two different things, and that's really one of the big open questions I have moving forward that's not clear to me, and I'm not sure for you guys, is the next version of .NET Core, 1.0, 2.0, whatever, is that what's moving forward? Is .NET full .NET moving forward too?
Yeah.
Is there going to be synergy? Like, what does it mean if like in my case, I actually have some ideas that I might want to take advantage of ASP Core in certain cases, but I also need full runtime. How do I build an application that could potentially have to deal with both? And what is the
how long is that full runtime going to continue living on, and when is it going to get sunset? The biggest, well, so first of all, the biggest kind of confusion for me, even for me personally, like I've been staying on top of this, and it's still like I have a very difficult time explaining it to other people clearly, is like the separation of .NET Core and ASP.NET Core, which seems like it should be simple, right? Because ASP.NET Core is a web framework built on .NET Core. None of that has changed in relation to, like, we used to have the core .NET framework, and then ASP.NET was on top of that, right? But what has changed, I guess, is certainly not the architecture, but I guess the delivery mechanism would be the best way to say it, is that they are kind of two separate things now. So before, you would just install .NET and you'd have ASP.NET there. You may have to install or download from NuGet ASP.NET MVC or ASP.NET Web API, right? Those different frameworks, but the core ASP.NET system.web, it was just right there. You had the full .NET framework. But
well, in System Web, you didn't get that through NuGet, right?
Well, right, yeah.
That was because you installed the .NET framework on a server.
Right.
Or it was already there. It's part of the Windows runtime, right?
It's part of the Windows runtime, yeah.
They felt the need to build core was not that they always tie it to the actual version of Windows.
Right.
Sorry,
so that's the most significant difference to me as a developer, is now everything is a package, including the .NET runtime itself, right? So, like, you don't install anything anymore. At most, you install the .NET utility, that CLI that gets everything for you, the package.
Well, and that's if you're building on .NET Core. So, like, there's the confusion right there, right? Is ASP.NET Core is a thing that you use to build web apps, but unless something's changed, you can build ASP.NET Core apps on .NET Core, which you get just the way you said, Jess, with the .NET engine, right?
Yep.
The .NET commands. But you can also do it on full .NET framework.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
That's my understanding.
So,
Right.
Still true. Not
So
sure what
that's-
that means, but it's still true.
and that's going to create a lot of confusion because .NET Core is a different thing from full .NET Framework. And for example, full .NET Framework, where does that run? Windows. The end of story.
Right.
I mean, unless you count Mono, which
That's even something else, I think, for this discussion.
for a while ASP.NET they were targeting Mono, but I think that's been pulled back a little bit for now.
Yeah, it would never work quite right. Like
There were always issues, yeah.
Yeah, I used the XSP plugin to Apache, 10 years ago, and I was able to run an ASP.NET website on Mono, just fooling around, a hobby site, right? You were never able to do it for anything real, at least that I found. I mean, I tried it that once and I gave up, right? Because there was very little I could actually do with it just because the libraries weren't implemented. So it always kind of seemed like a hobby project or something, not something that you would really use. But now we're getting into the realm of this is stuff that you can really use, right? Whether it's running on top of Mono or this .NET Core, which are, I think for the purposes of this conversation, they're effectively the same thing. Would that be fair to say? They're serving the same purpose, right? They are the runtime. And Mono was kind of the old one before .NET Core existed, and it was the only way to run cross-platform. It was the only way to run on Linux. But now Microsoft with .NET Core now has its own.
Yeah, I mean, the real technically Core runs on what? It runs on Mac. It runs on Linux.
Yep.
I remember when I was doing research for today's show, I think it was Scott Hanselman had a link to Red Hat has how to run .NET Core on Red Hat right on their own website. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they ever had anything about Mono, right? Yeah. You probably had to dig around in some Mono discussion board or somewhere to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
I always kind of looked at Mono as it was a good idea that never really went anywhere. I mean, you could do a lot of things with it, but it was never it wasn't backed by Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was something that was like cool, it exists. Yeah. And I mean, you kind of on the phones, right? We had MonoDroid and I forget the other one was for iOS.
Well, MonoTouch for iOS, and I mean, it's still the heart of Xamarin.
Yeah, I mean, you could
platforms, and Mono I think was trying to be the full framework on other platforms. I mean, it is the heart of Unity.
Yeah, it was when we followed the spec, right? The .NET
engine. Yeah, if you're using the Unity game engine and you're targeting, well, you can even target Windows with it. You're using Mono.
Yeah.
But again, Mono I don't think fits in today's discussion because really we're saying .NET Core was released, and then the first piece of confusion that's super easy to get in is you go, well, wait, I'm interested in ASP.NET Core. Does that only run on .NET Core? And the answer is no. You can run it on full framework. And that used to be really transparent in the tooling. I don't know how that's going to look going forward because the tooling is still churning.
It's the tooling. The ASP.NET Core now, they've been released, but the tooling is still RC.
Yeah,
right? RC
so Visual Studio is still preview. So that's kind of weird.
Yeah,
right. That's
it's a 1.0 version. Things aren't quite
especially
fully...
if you're trying to create a training course around it.
But
at least right now, you're creating. It's asking you right up front. I did this just last night. It's asking you right up front. It gives you two project types. Do you want an ASP.NET Core project with .NET Core or ASP.NET Core web project with .NET Full? If you create them, the only difference is that one of them has an app config, the full one has an app config, and the other one, the .NET Core one, has what I just mentioned earlier. It has a package reference to the .NET Core library. That is literally the only difference between the two templates, right? Which begs the question, why are there two templates? But whatever. Again, I'm not going to attack the tooling.
That's maybe more of a semantic thing, right, to get the tooling without changing.
Well, I wonder if there was some customer confusion because the templates weren't separate. And
do you think this fixes that?
I think it's more confusion.
I don't think it fixes it because I remember that you would create a new project and you could go look up in references in Solution Explorer and you would see a reference to both frameworks.
Right.
And as you were using IntelliSense, if you picked out an API that worked in full framework but not in .NET Core, there'd be this little flag that would be like, "Hey."
Warn you. Yeah.
Now,
so this just confuses
they merged it a little. How's it going to land?
Because they're saying, you just said, they are saying, you can create an ASP.NET Core website and you can run it on .NET Full or .NET Core. So okay, so then why isn't there just one ASP.NET Core website template?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right? Like from literally before you even do file new project or as you're doing file new project, the very first thing you run into is confusion, right? It's just encouraging this confusion and this separation of, well, what do I want, right? So a developer coming into this new, I don't know which one to choose.
Well, yes, right. You're
Or
asking the developer to
decide to make that choice. Why am I making the choice?
Yep.
So something interesting, just a simple aside that I notice is when you look at .NET Core documentation, so I'm not in ASP.NET now, it's just .NET Core, they have a C# guide and an F# guide. The F# guys are probably thrilled because it's like elevating F#, right? VB is absent.
Yeah.
Does that mean it doesn't work?
So that's an interesting question. So they've always had VB on the roadmap, but it was on the ASP.NET Core roadmap. So I started to dig around the API, and there is a reference to a Visual Basic API.
Yeah, I hear it's coming, and I believe because Rosalind has supported it for years, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely been a second-class citizen, but it's been, I guess not second-class citizen, but
yeah, here come the comments.
Secondary to C#, right?
Yes. It wasn't Core.
Yeah.
Now it's being brought into Core.
Well, so second-class citizen in that it clearly wasn't deemed required in order to go RTM, right? So,
Yeah, that's a fair
statement.
I mean, you could argue for a very long time it's been a second-class citizen.
Yes, well. But, so going back to ASP.NET Core on top of .NET Core, right? The choice of .NET Full versus .NET Core. Why do I care? Forget about, what do I do? Why do I care? Let's assume that we've gone through and we figure out why I would choose one over the other. Why do I care now, right? If it runs on .NET Full and I'm already on Windows and I already have .NET Full installed, why do I care? And vice versa. If I'm on, let's say, Linux, of course I'm not on Linux using Visual Studio, but if I'm deploying to Linux, if my target is Linux, and I'm going to go and I'm going to target .NET Core, why do I care about .NET Full? What is this? What does this buy me? The ability to target both of them.
Well, do you think maybe that's why they decided not to, or to split the templates, or are we giving them too much credit?
I don't know why.
I'm probably giving too much credit. So this is what my understanding, or what's attracted to me, being able to run Core across different platforms, is cloud-based stuff. And I know that with something like Docker, which runs only on Linux right now, that if I wanted to take advantage of .NET Core or ASP.NET Core on Docker, I have to use .NET Core. I don't have the full .NET runtime. That's not an option for me right now.
Sure, right.
So that means that, to me, is, at least in my near future, the next 6 months, a year, where I see Core being used by myself and the team I work with and stuff, is if we're looking at cloud-based solutions. If we were just doing traditional web applications, other than like, oh, let's just do it, it feels like I might go down that path and then realize, oh, now there's something I need from full.NET.
Yeah.
And I got to switch back.
Yeah. So I think that is the answer. At least that would be my answer. But let me rephrase. If we're going back to .NET Full and I choose .NET Full, why in the world do I care about ASP.NET Core? Why do I care that ASP.NET Core runs on .NET Full? By the time I'm depending on .NET Full, why aren't I just using ASP.NET?
So I guess the question there is, at least for me, is do both of these things now continue to evolve into the future? Yeah. Or is Core just the future, and at some point .NET Full and ASP.NET traditional, I don't even know what we call it now, current, do those simply, they do what they do and they're not going to really be more enhancements coming and things like that?
I mean, it's ASP.NET 4.6. I don't think they call it Full. That's why they added the Core name. They didn't call it Shazam, like we've mentioned a few times.
Well, that's for us to do, right? We're going to create it and create Shazam.
No, there's, I mean, make no beans about it. It's full, right? It is related to ASP.NET 4.6 is to ASP.NET Core. I don't know the metaphor there.
I don't think it's fuller. I don't think
ASP.NET 4.6 only runs on .NET Full. They are tied together.
But there's enough differences, though, that, like, for example, ASP.NET Core doesn't have system web. It's entirely NuGet based.
Mm-hmm.
you can't say that one is a superset of the other. They're cousins. One was inspired by the other because there's a lot of concept compatibility and namespaces are the same.
I know. No. So my question is, we talked about names in previous shows, right? So we can call it Shazam. We can call ASP.NET Core Shazam, right? Because for all intents and purposes, it is a new framework. It shares a lot of the same concepts and maybe even a lot of the same code, but it's completely rewritten, right? So it's a new framework. Why should I care about learning this new framework when I already have .NET Full on my machine, which means that I have ASP.NET 4.6.
Right, you're already ready to do that deployment.
Already ready.
Well, maybe that's
just
it.
Right?
Maybe the idea was we're going to have a migration story by telling you get to ASP.NET Core, but don't worry, you can run it in your current IT setup environment with .NET Full Framework on Windows servers. And over time, we've begun to realize who's going to migrate that way. Most people are going to scrap, right?
Right.
You're going to be like, we're starting over.
Which brings me back to my previous point, right? If your target state, if your end state is to be running on Linux, is to be cross-platform,
you're starting over.
As far as I'm concerned, is the only reason to be targeting .NET Core. Feel free to disagree with me. That's the only reason, right? Cloud, Linux, all of that stuff, only reason.
The only other reason I could think of is I've heard a lot about the performance of Core being very fast, particularly ASP.NET Core.
Right. Like it's 2 orders of magnitude faster, which is enough to make me think, okay, maybe if I am a Windows shop, I still want to look at that.
That's critical, right? Even if you're going to run Windows, you still need to have that power. And I guess I don't know if we know or not know, but to me is part of this because they've optimized it and they were able to optimize it because they got rid of all the legacy, or is it simply because they got rid of all the legacy code? Right, all those layers and layers and layers of abstractions that really were built for web forms, right? They weren't even really built for MVC or Web API, because all those layers are gone now and they simplify things. Is that where they gain the performance? Or
so I can speak to it a little bit.
Hold on. Before we go on there, I want to clarify because we got on this conversation of the idea of running an ASP.NET Core application on top of .NET Full. Now, all of these performance enhancements, they're going straight to
.NET Core,
right?
Yes, right.
So I'm not trying to kill this conversation.
You're right, though.
No. I think that's a good point to make.
Yeah. I mean, what I was thinking though is that I think there is I think it's like you were saying. Hey, I'll take ASP.NET Core and I'm going to Linux with it. The consideration someone would make, even if they were a Windows shop in the Windows world, is that they're at least 125 times faster, is what it's looking like. And I think that's a big deal. We're not talking like 8 or 12x.
Sure.
And it all came in. I've watched the performance stuff for a while, and yes, just because they rewrote it, of course, they got a little bit of speed. That helped. But the big performance gains came when some people from the outside actually came in who have worked very, very hard at writing optimized, long-lived .NET applications. And they brought their expertise to the table, which tends to be in how you deal with the garbage collector.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge one, apparently, when they just, you want to let things that are going to live forever, go ahead and let them get to Gen 2, and you want everything else to die in Gen 0, and that is the optimized world. Now, most of us writing applications, we don't need to worry about that. But if you're going to build something like most of us, like when you think about a .NET app that lives for a couple hours and then gets shut down, who cares? But when you're writing something that's going to live a long time, you got to start thinking about it at least. And so that was where the big performance gains came in, and that was when it started just skyrocketing, where it was, like they blew past Node in their test setup, and now they're heading towards a top 10 performance on the Tech and Power benchmarks. For me, I want to see them get into those benchmarks and be part of the tests. Right now, what we're relying on is, okay, well, we did what the Tech and Power guys did, and here are our numbers.
Yeah.
Well, cool, good, awesome. I cannot wait to see how they actually perform when they get into that benchmark. I really want them to get there.
This conversation tends to bore me because even though it's completely valid, all of these arguments, all of these points are just completely valid. I haven't really heard anybody complaining about the performance of ASP.NET Full today, right? It still runs thousands, millions of sites internally and externally without any complaints. And generally, if you have performance issues, you apply things like caching or just throw hardware at it, right? And it might not be the best or most effective, cost-effective solution, but it is effective, right? And it works.
So I have run into cases where, particularly the startup time, was a big issue, and we played games. We played games is we kicked something off so the cache got created the first time.
Sure, right. Me too. That's what I do with all my sites.
Well, I mean, you should do that anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a general thing.
Here's where I think where I actually think it is a consideration is the day will come when somebody in an org, a VP, a CTO, somebody will say, you know, I've been looking at performance numbers, and ASP.NET is getting trashed by Node. Why aren't we looking at Node? Node's hot. There's plenty of Node developers. Like, I just feel like that conversation would begin to happen more and more, and so the next project would be started on Node, and eventually ASP.NET's your legacy stuff, and then let's get rid of that too.
It's going to happen either way, though. I mean,
don't you think there's something about being competitive, though?
I don't think it's meaningful. That your CTO is going to come to you and say, I saw this XYZ framework. Why aren't we using this? And you're going to have that conversation regardless of how good your current stuff is.
Well, not current stuff. Now the conversation is, but look, ASP.NET has really improved, and we get this. We just go to .NET Core. We don't even think about it, and boom, we get. We're up there competing with Netty, or we're competing with Falcon, or these ones that are doing well.
You don't just go to ASP.NET Core, right? It's effectively a rewrite.
Yeah, you're right.
A migration, I guess, would be a more polite way to say it.
But the tooling, I mean, for the most part, right, you can still use Visual Studio. It's still .NET. Like, the approaches are the same, right? I'm creating collections. All that's the same. I go to Node, right? Now I need to retrain my developers. It's more of a transition.
You need to retrain your developers.
Yeah, because just to get started, your main is different.
Yep. Arguably, it's more confusing to train your developers from ASP.NET to ASP.NET Core than it is from ASP.NET to...
I'm going to argue against that one.
The whole pipeline and the global ASAX are gone, and now you've got public static void main, right?
Yep. And so your skills in C# transfer over.
Yeah.
And so this concept compatibility, while I love the idea, sometimes it can be more confusing, and it can add more confusion than it can actually solve, right?
But that's the fun part.
It's completely different. That can be a bad thing, especially when you're first trying to learn it and make sense of it all.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely can be confusing. I kind of look at it as the fun part. Because, I know how to do this, but now how do I do it in Core? What is different? What are the things I need to unlearn? Yeah. I guess when I think about performance, and I've kind of have to deal with this in the past with 10,000s of congruent users, and in the future, looking at thinking about cloud is I want to be able to use my .NET skill set to be able to build massive systems that maybe handle hundreds of thousands of congruent users, and to me that's my excitement for Core. It's really that.
Let's get into that. I agree. I think that honestly is the reason why you would choose ASP or ASP.NET Core, .NET Core, whatever. Why you would choose that now. So let's get into that. So what is it about that skill set that makes it so valuable? Other than the obvious, I already know C#, you now have to, and maybe the core libraries are the same, right? But this concept compatibility means that there are new APIs to learn. So they look and feel really, really similar to what you know, but you're still got to learn them, right? So you get a little bit ahead of the curve. You don't have to learn everything from scratch, but you still got to learn them. Now that everything is a package, and you have to pull in everything explicitly, we're now much closer to the Node world of I need to do this thing. I don't want to write it. I want to use something that somebody else wrote. So I'm going to go out to NPM, and I'm going to grab the package that does it for me. If I go to NuGet, which is kind of being hidden now. It's not really called NuGet, right? It's the .NET Package Manager, but it's NuGet under the hood. If I go out to NuGet and I say I need this package that does something for me, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not I get a Microsoft package or a community package, is kind of irrelevant to me, right? So that to me was one of the benefits of .NET Full is not only is it already on your machine and it's just there, like finding it is just look right there, right? Look at the assemblies that you have or look at the MSDN documentation and you'll find it. But it's also already installed, right? And then you just add it and you start using it. Now there's this extra step of in order to use anything, including Microsoft stuff, you have to go search for it. You have to find it. You have to
might not know what it is.
Searching for.
I remember when I was trying to build a web API with MVC6, or sorry, now MVC Core.
Even more confusion.
That the conventions for building a web API were different than what you get by default in Web API 2.
Yeah.
So if you're trying, which maybe this was a fool's errand, honestly, but if you say, well, wait a second, I want this to work the way Web API 2 did, where it would look at the accept header and it would choose which thing to send back, that in order to get back to that, it was not only figuring out what code to write to enable those options, it was which packages were hiding that stuff.
Yep.
Which serializer, .xml. And now, when I was finished doing it, I said, well, maybe this was kind of foolish because is there anybody out there writing web APIs and still working their butt off to make it work with XML? Like maybe I was wasting my time.
But that goes back to my point, right? Is that by the time you're going out to a package repository and getting the package that does what you want, who cares if it's created by Microsoft or the community, right? So
I might care a little bit.
Microsoft's taken that stance, right? What do they use for JSON parsing now?
JSON.NET. They
don't use Microsoft stuff.
Well, they have for a while, right? Not just now, with .NET Core, but for years now.
Right. And honestly, I think the ASP.NET team, they've settled on XUnit. That's clear. Yeah. So they're willing to let that go. They're willing to say, man, we don't have to invent everything.
Great.
Which is uncomfortable for some developers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some organizations, right?
So
or
just
know it.
Right. Some orgs want it all to be.
Right. Going back to what Todd said, this is an ecosystem that I already know, and that this is kind of what I'm attacking here. Is what benefit are you really getting by bringing forward, right? By saying, well, I already know .NET, I already know the Microsoft stack, because first of all, now you're going and getting packages, regardless of whether you're getting Microsoft packages or community packages. It frankly doesn't even matter, right? You're getting packages. You need to know what to get. And so what value are you getting? What value is this ecosystem getting you to keep on it, right? C# is awesome. I love it, right? It gives you static typing, but...
So I look at it in reverse order. So to me, when I think of the Microsoft stack, I think of the developer experience and the server, right? So I think of the developer experience, it's about Visual Studio more than anything else, right? And then C# obviously would be the language of stuff. When I look at Core, to me it's just a different set of APIs to learn, but I'm basically building the same type of applications. Yeah, maybe I have to go get packages now, but I'm used to that, right? Because I'm a web developer, right? If I want to go get Angular, I need a package to get Angular or whatever. Yep. It's already something I'm already doing. Yep. I definitely can see people who are only like WPF developers. This would be a big difference for them, right? Or a much bigger change. For me, as a current MVC ASP.NET developer, I look at it as more of an evolution, right? I'm now adopting the good things that are from Node without going completely to Node. Because I feel like if I went completely to Node, I have to learn how to build and architect solutions for Node, right?
So I don't want to turn this into a Node podcast.
Yes.
That is clearly, and there are plenty of other alternatives other than Node, but that is...
Yeah, I'm using that as an example.
But it's an example because it's incredibly topical. Because when you really start using ASP.NET Core, it's very clear. If you've used Node and you've developed Node sites, it's very, very clear that they took a lot of hints from not just the Node community and the Node development lifecycle and tooling and everything. They took direct hints directly from the way that Node works, right? All the like middleware and all of this stuff. When you're writing ASP.NET Core, you're basically doing Microsoft Node.
Yeah, well, it's like the Express pipeline, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It's exactly like it.
But now,
exactly like it.
Which came first? Which came first, the Owen pipeline or the Express pipeline, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say, and honestly, I'm pretty sure it was the Express pipeline, to be honest with you. But they were inspired by Owen, which was, In fact, they were going to move full bore to Owen with
Yeah.
ASP.NET, and then I think what happened is that spec wasn't moving fast enough for them. So,
Sure.
although I don't know that for sure.
Right. Regardless of that, regardless of who was first,
Right. Who cares?
The logical conclusion to this is now you're basically faced with: do I use the Node.js pipeline, the Node.js development approach? Do I develop that in C# with Microsoft packages, which may or may not be Microsoft, or do I develop it with JavaScript or TypeScript? Right. If I really want static typing in my JavaScript, do I write it with JavaScript/TypeScript and use NPM packages?
Right.
So
hold on. And putting in the context of this is a web application after all, right? Like we're not talking about desktop apps right now. We're strictly talking about .NET. I mean ASP.NET apps, web apps,
web server.
Right. And so clearly, I'm almost certainly going to be creating some UI, in other words, HTML and JavaScript on the browser. So at that point, why don't I use JavaScript on the browser, JavaScript on the server? I'm done with it, right? I've got my cross-platform because Node runs cross-platform. Node is fast. Right? So what is the win? What does ASP.NET Core bring me over the Node community now?
For me, it's Visual Studio without question. The second thing is
I can develop Node.js applications in Visual Studio. I do. It's awesome.
But it's not what I do day to day, right? I have to switch. To me, it's a mental switch there to go to Node. First, going to Core to me is a step in that direction, but it's not a full switch. Within hours, I'm working. I'm just doing an API, different API. If I can go to Node, I need to start thinking a different way. Like that's just who I am.
I do think there are a lot of developers that are just, Microsoft deliver us what's next, and that's not a horrible thing. You've built your career on it, right? Like, it doesn't make you a bad person.
This is where I'm at. Is I have been that guy, and I'm having this crisis of faith because Microsoft is feeding me this new thing, and I can't see the value of it. Like, why are you forcing me to learn something new when I already invested dozens of years or a dozen years in learning the old thing? And if you're going to make me learn something new, well, everybody else is using Node.js, right? That's the new hotness now, and it's hot for a reason. So if I'm going to learn something new, why don't I learn that? The thing that is arguably more popular, at least in the...
I don't know about more popular. It's hard to say.
I'm not going to stand by that. Yeah. I'm not going to argue that comment.
It's certainly more discussed.
Yes, it's incredibly popular.
So here I think is the other reality is, and this is, I think it would be right relative to for you, Jess, right? Is if you go to your boss and say tomorrow, let's switch to ASP.NET Core and here are the advantages, I think it's a much easier to sell than to say let's go switch to Node.
No.
But they're not going to know. They're going to see .NET, right? Even though it is different, it's still Microsoft. It's still .NET. Going to Node to me is that's switching platforms.
Oh, so it's smoke and mirrors. It's parlor tricks, right? We're relying on the brand name to move us forward. What is the value, right?
Well, okay. So the value is
I would have to say we're going to switch, and here would be the cost. Here's what we would do. Here's what we would need to invest in order to switch. We'd have to train up on what is effectively a new framework. We'd have to rewrite and/or quote migrate our applications, which is
we'll definitely migrate.
Rewrite, right? Like there's a cost.
Well, I think the value is there is an argument to be made that you take JavaScript to be your client, your server, your everywhere, and there's value in that, right? There's value in saying we're going to reuse this skill set everywhere. But there's also value if you say, well, we're a .NET shop, we have .NET expertise, and we don't mind doing .NET on the server.
So to be very clear, my argument is not that, but my argument doesn't stop there. That I'm already doing JavaScript on the browser, so why don't I just do it on the server? My argument is that Node.js runs JavaScript, which also runs in the browser, which I already know because I'm already in the browser. By definition, if I'm a web developer, I know it, right? I already know that. Node.js runs on that, and so why don't I just use that? Node.js is a very mature ecosystem with a large community and very powerful, very fast, right? So why don't I just use that? Not just because it runs Java, but because I already know
very
Java.
Fast. And if if the ASP.NET team is successful, they're going to beat the heck out of it. So then it won't be very fast.
And
So then you can remove the very fast from a bullet point, right?
Oh,
and I've
sure.
always been very suspect when people say very fast or scale. I personally definitely know how to make stuff scale in the Microsoft world on the server. I know how to do it. Node, I have no clue. I'd have to go learn all that, right? Because I'm an architect. I want to understand how to build the right solution for that platform. I just
Yeah.
want to blindly take what I know now and make it work.
It's the
To
same
me,
basic
core,
concepts.
it's not different. It's stuff I've done for years on the Microsoft platform.
It's the same concepts. I guarantee you, if you were in a consulting gig, that you would know how to scale Node within 3 or 4 weeks, right? Like
Oh
it's
no, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure I would
So
figure it out. But I don't have to. To me, I'm just learning a new API, right? It's the same thing when I switch from WPF to Silverlight to UWP. The API is different, but what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, how I'm approaching writing the code, is the same.
I
That's
think
my
the
point.
Node versus ASP.NET is a show.
Yeah, it's a whole
I
other.
do. I think it is. I think it is a show. What I'd like to hear about is we walked away from it very quickly. Is one of the deployment options we have now is ASP.NET Core via Docker, which does
yes,
necessarily mean Linux.
yeah,
And Jess, you've really liked where the Docker ecosystem's going and what it gives you.
yeah. So I've been a grumpy troll for this whole episode, and here's where I start getting excited, right? So the fact is, I have been looking at .NET Core since it's been beta. I've been looking at it. I've been a .NET developer for the whole life of the framework since 2000 now. So I'm invested in it. I want to see it work, and I'm also really, really interested in the emerging. I guess you could still classify it as emerging. I don't know. It's probably more mature than that now, but the emerging practice of containers and microservices, right? And so what I've been playing with lately, which has quite honestly distracted me from learning .NET Core as well as I should, is learning about Docker. And I've pretty much stopped at Docker specifically, but learning about the Docker tooling and playing around with that to get multiple instances up, and specifically like Docker Compose, which allows you to basically create one script, which you can, in just using YAML, right, just text-based configuration, just say use this image, and by the way, copy my application into this folder, and hey, also map that folder in that container to my local folder, so I can open that in Visual Studio, Todd,
There you go.
and make changes in there and save, and it just saves directly into my container, right? Make that link. And then also create a Postgres SQL image, right? A separate database image. How about a Cassandra image, right? And then, while we're at it, let's just throw an Nginx image on there for load balancing on the whole thing, right? And so also what I've been doing, since I've been looking at both microservices and Docker, is now rather than putting my static content, my static site, HTML and JavaScript and CSS in my ASP.NET Core site, which I typically just use for basically serving web APIs, I now have them separate because they are two different things. Now, technically, I could get away with it. Nobody would be yelling at me if I was deploying them in one site, right? And after all, they are just static files. They don't really cost anything to download. It's not like they're request pulling down my site. But in the nature of microservices, everything is separate. And so with Docker, it's really easy to say, well, in this project, on my local folder, I've got two folders, right? I've got my server and my client in two different folders. Put my server one in this container and put my client one in this other container, which is just Nginx, which is really fast. And then, once you've done all this, Docker Compose, go, right? Docker Compose up is the actual command. And it goes, and man, it's like when I was a kid, right? My first application where I wrote some basic and I made the computer do something, and it was just magic. This goes and it compiles the images, it downloads the images automatically, compiles it, puts my code in it, opens up 20 instances of each of them, puts the Nginx load balancer in, links the private network, all of this stuff, right? And I learned this in 4 hours. And I was able to get this little ecosystem on my local dev machine my basically mini cloud, this local cloud of like load balanced containers with a couple of them dedicated to databases, a couple of them dedicated to my static content, and then within all that, coming back to your point, one of them is an ASP.NET Core app in Docker, which the image is just there. Microsoft has an official .NET Core image that you can just link to it, copy your app over, go. It is that simple.
So it's a big deal that .NET Core runs on Linux. Like that, I feel like that was a win because it enables you to say, hey, this is a modern architecture I want to look at.
Yes.
You'd be shut out of ASP.NET. It'd be over.
Yes. Yeah. The question I keep posing is, what value does this bring? Why would I choose ASP.NET Core? I think, and they've been pretty clear about it, they need something that is cloud ready, cloud scale, right? They use a lot of terms, but cloud is in all of them, right?
Yes.
And it's clearly, lightweight, and Microsoft doesn't necessarily care about Linux because Windows runs in the cloud. But yes, I would say that especially right now, Linux is where containers are out.
Right. Well, yeah.
It's like Windows is catching
The Windows
up.
containers won't, they're Server 2016.
It's theoretical.
I think that has to play out, right? We have to see those things come out. We have to see how that works with this Nano server, which it all sounds really promising. It'll be cool to play with, but I think we won't be talking about that till like winter.
Yeah, that's future stuff. So,
But
Jeff,
it's interesting.
a couple quick questions on this. So, when you're doing all this, are you running on your Windows machine or a Linux machine?
It doesn't matter. It's literally the same code, the same Docker Compose file.
No, I meant is your dev environment. You said in 4 hours you had us all up and running.
Yeah.
What are you running your dev environment in? You're in Windows and you have a Linux.
So I
VM
happen to be in Windows on my nice brand new Surface Book, which I love.
There you go. Yes, we found a excuse.
But no, I happen to be running in Windows. But when you look at pretty much any guide in Docker and you run those commands, it's literally the same exact command because on Windows, what you do is you install Docker for Windows.
Okay, so there is Docker for Windows. That was
There's Docker for Windows, right? And so what that does, I don't want this to turn into a Docker show, but what that does is it actually installs a Linux VM.
Okay, gotcha.
It installs a Linux VM in Hyper-V, but you can also choose VirtualBox, I believe.
Yeah.
With an option in the installer, but that's another option that you can do. But it installs a VM, which is a really, really lightweight VM. I think it's literally like a couple hundred megs or something like that.
Okay.
And
so your image is running in Linux. That's the part I was trying to understand.
Yes. Ultimately, all of your images, when you say Docker up, right, or Docker Compose up, and it creates these and it instantiates them and everything, it's all happening within that, what is essentially a VM on your PC, right?
And so on that VM, you're running .NET Core and ASP.NET Core.
On that VM, in that VM, I'm running containers. In those
which
containers,
then contain.
You're running .NET Core, a Linux container, running Linux and .NET Core, the Linux version of .NET Core.
So for you, when we were talking about the merits of .NET Core and on Windows and why not just use full framework and ASP.NET 4.6, it's really, for you, it's Docker's the game changer. It's the one that makes you say, hey, now I'll look at ASP.NET Core.
Yes, that's why when cross-platform to me, when they say .NET Core is targeting cross-platform, that to me translates into you can develop on your MacBook and you can deploy into Linux, into Docker in Linux.
Right.
That's what that directly translates to me.
Now, do you guys think there are orgs out there who are looking at their Windows licenses and wanting to cut that cost? I mean, is that part of it?
Yeah, there have to be, but I never really bought that, right? Like, they've been used to spending it for so long, and again, the cost to migrate over is so great.
You need new people, new training.
Yeah. And so this is what I'm saying. So this is why I'm so animated before. This is my background of what I've been doing for the past couple of months is ultimately when I'm going through all this trouble and learning all of this stuff to just run this in Docker to be cross-platform, aka cloud-ready, right? AKA run my stuff on Linux in a container. By the time I'm going through all of that work and investing all of that, especially if I'm an ASP.NET person today, a .NET person today, which basically means I'm a Windows person today.
Right.
Once I'm changing everything, why don't I just go to Node, right? Like, I'm changing my whole world. Why would I be changing my whole world and then keep sticking with ASP.NET, with the Windows-based thing?
I guess.
So some people hate JavaScript. Like that's a
Yeah.
thing.
Sure. No, and I love C Sharp. Like I am a huge.
Right. And I love C Sharp. But
Who
to be
knows?
honest, I love JavaScript. So I'm one of the people who would be like, why do you hate JavaScript so much? But
Well, right.
some people do.
I adore TypeScript, right? As anybody who listens to the show knows, I
Sure,
adore
right.
TypeScript. I'm a fanboy of TypeScript, but
Okay.
I still think C Sharp is the best language I've ever used.
So then what about this then? This ability for you to stay in C Sharp, work in a container, so you have that ability to say, I'm in such a production-like environment that I'm not going to have the pain point of, well, what happened in production, and then go to a service like either Azure Container Service or the Amazon equivalent.
It's not about the language. The ecosystem, the development platform that you're on is a combination of language and services, right? Whatever you want to call it, the framework that you're building on top of, right? So in .NET, it's the CLR, it's the base class libraries that are available, right? And so that is the ecosystem that you're building against, and the language is just the way that you interact with that.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean that's true. I mean technically, right? There was a JavaScript.NET version or JScript.NET version around one point, wasn't there?
Right.
So
which would go the other way. If I wanted to use TypeScript and hit .NET assemblies theoretically,
you probably can make it work, right?
Yeah.
I guess to me is I still don't buy this idea that everything you just described is less of a change than going to Node. And I mean you've worked with Node more than I have. So what I look at it is what you're describing. I've done all those things, right? This concept of containers and things, while it wasn't quite the same, when you were dealing with MTS and Com Plus, you kind of had that same mindset. You had to approach it like that. It's a container.
MTS and Com Plus.
Yeah, I'm going old school here on you guys.
What happened to the show?
Well,
Everybody, .NET Core RTM. Today we're going to talk about MTS and Com Plus.
It was the one thing that's been missing in freaking .NET since the beginning. Is we didn't have MTS. We didn't have distributed transaction systems. So I still feel like why I have to learn a few new things. For me to I want to learn Docker. The fact that I can bring .NET there in any format means I only have to focus on learning Docker. If I had to learn Node and Docker, now I got to learn two things. To me, that's a huge advantage. I'm using the stuff I'm already using day to day, and now I'm gaining a new platform to work on, which gets me to go to the cloud.
It's just a fallacy, right? So
why is it a fallacy? I don't believe it.
Concept compatible. You're not literally taking the code you're writing today and copying and recompiling it against .NET Core, and you're on your way.
No, but if I start a new project,
large portions of that.
If I want to create a collection, if I want to talk to a database, I have Entity Framework. Entity Framework Core, they're...
Well,
what do you mean? Entity Framework Core are two different things. Again, concept compatible, right?
But it's still, I'm going to open a connection.
You do have ADO.NET. Although I haven't played with the code yet. But I
that's a whole other discussion.
I see system data in there. I'd love to check it out.
To me, it's still the same. It's still my same experience. It's just a different API to work with. It's still the same, though. If I'm going to create a generic collection, I'm still creating a generic collection. If I'm going to create a class, I'm still creating a class the same way. If it's a struct, I'm still structuring a struct the same way. If I'm going to use link, it's the same. It doesn't feel different to me. Where if I'm going to go to Node, it is an entirely different thing. Now, we haven't even mentioned that, really off sidetrack here, didn't half a Node get taken down 2 weeks ago because some guy got pissed off and took his stuff down? So, I don't know. To me, it's a evolution, not a radical change. You sound like you disagree. You sound like, to me, you're not buying it.
I don't disagree with anything that you just said.
Right. What you're saying is that going to .NET Core is such a rewrite that maybe you'd consider switching platforms anyway.
Yes.
So there's a lot left to talk about here. I mean, which is great. We haven't talked about Net Standard. I guess you could say is the evolution of PCLs, but I think there's a show there, and maybe that statement is wrong, what I just said, but it feels like it.
Certainly the writing on the wall. Sounds like
we
that.
didn't even talk about MVC core. I think now we could really talk about that concept compatibility and what's coming in EF core. So there's going to be a lot left, which is cool.
We didn't even get to talk about the fact that Xamarin at some point will run on Core. The Core
Well, yeah.
isn't just going to be ASP.NET, it's going to be other stuff.
The slide
Yeah.
looked like UWP, Xamarin, Unity, and ASP.NET.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so is there anything that we need to discuss in this episode? Because it sounds like we're going to have a couple of episodes
Oh
coming
yeah.
up.
Yes.
Now that we're back.
but-
We're back from summer vacation, baby.
Well, I think the key is digging into this, figuring out what matters to us as developers.
Yeah,
But it's
definitely.
here. It is officially here.
And the
Absolutely.
audience, what matters to you? I mean, that really, right? We're just discussing what we think about. We're learning to learn. This is a whole new thing for everybody to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know. You can send your comments to comments at staticvoidpodcast.com, or just go to our web. God damn it!
Go to our core. Web is out. It's all about core.
This is the first time I'm doing this without any script. I'm just winging it. You figure after what are we up to? 15 episodes now, I'd be able to do it. Let's see. Okay. Or just go to our website at www.staticvoidpodcast.com and leave a comment there. We'd love to hear what you want to think. We'd love to hear what you think, and give us ideas for any other future episodes, things you want to hear about. And with that, I think that's a show. So,
Yeah.
Todd, Chris, thanks for joining.
Yep.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And thank you, listener. We'll see you next time on the Static Void Podcast. Done. All right, are we leaving the broadcast open?
Sure, why not?
All right.
I think that was great.
I thought we went around the Node C# conversation twice. I said, okay, we did it twice. Let's move on.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna have to,
I mean, I
It's
understand.
important to discuss it, right?
the
I mean,
points
that
are the
really
point.
is a key thing.
Yep.
And I think at some point down the line, we can have a much more in-depth discussion over Node versus Core.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not
and
convinced.
I'm glad that you finally brought it around full circle, Chris, and just basically just restated what I kept trying to say and didn't say, right? Like that just nailed it and brought it home. But that's really what it is. I mean, I'm literally having a crisis of faith here, right? Like I have labeled myself a .NET developer for 20 years, and now I'm like, oh, do I really want to like invest and learn this new thing? Like, what am I gonna get out of it?
Well, see, I'd argue is Node is hot now, just like Ruby was hot 3 or 4 years ago. Will really be that hot in a few years? I'm not convinced.
I'm feeling the same way about .NET Core. I'm feeling like this move is so disruptive and confusing that a lot of other people are thinking the way I am, and more importantly, the new folks coming into this, they're going to lose the new folks because new folks are just going to be hearing about Node and just say, yeah, just use Node, right? When you compare them side by side, and you see like everybody's using Node, then why don't I just use Node, right? That's the hot thing. For better or worse, for whatever reasons, it is the hot thing right now. Why wouldn't I just use the hot thing and be part of that cool community? And the current people are going to be alienated by these changes, right?
They want to see where VB and web forms are.
Why are you making me learn so much new stuff to bring me back to the same exact place I'm at now?
They rewrote it. That's great.
I don't know. It's fun. It's interesting. Fun new technology. If we didn't
So
have
it's-
new toys to play with, it wouldn't be fun.
I think though that I think they also had the problem of if they just kept evolving full framework in ASP.NET, eventually you would abandon it just because you're like, well, it's getting its butt kicked in my cloud-based app.
Yeah, or the problem is they'd have to keep tying it to the version of Windows. That's a huge thing.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Chris, that they had to do something, and probably something drastic in order to stay relevant.
I don't
But I'm
disagree
not really
that
sure
this is
this-
a gasp. It's a gasp that could be like, is it the gasp of like a resurgence, or is it the gasp of a dying ecosystem?
Exactly. Does it keep them relevant? Like it's drastic.
Because here's the thing: even if Node ends up falling by the wayside, there are other things ready to take its place, like
Yeah.
Python and Falcon or Elixir.
Well, and Ruby was hot before Node, right?
Yeah, and then there'll always be something else, right? Go or something else. Scala. There's lots of other things in this marketplace. I get it this way. Microsoft has bet the company on Azure. There's
Oh yeah.
no
Well, and look at
doubt
the
in
quarterly
question.
results, right?
This is all about getting people to Azure. And you know what? They're winning. They are getting companies to adopt them.
Yes, but they
Their
don't
own
care
companies.
if they're running .NET or Node.
And
They
that's a
don't
good thing, right?
care. They don't care, but I do think there's something to be said for convincing their legion of loyal .NET developers to come along for the ride, even if eventually you move them off .NET. If a .NET developer comes along for the ride to Azure and then later says, well, yeah, let's switch to Node, but we're going to keep using Azure, it's still the win that they
The
need,
win is
right?
still there for them. Yep, without question.
I mean,
I
I,
guess.
I am consistently amazed that they got us all to move to .NET. They were taking the C++ ecosystem, the VB6 ecosystem, and they moved us to .NET, and they did it without losing a whole lot of the big army.
And a lot of people who went over to Java came back because Java's even more of a fucked up mess, or more of a screwed up mess.
Right, and I think the issue now is okay, so the faithful are leaving. Is there something we can do to get them on Azure? Because if you look at today's quarterlies, it's Azure. It's Azure.
Yeah. I also think too, long term, and a lot of this comes down to if Apple would ever allow it, the idea that .NET Core runs on Linux, which means it can run on Android devices. The idea that we didn't even touch on .NET Native, right?
Yeah, and we
And
did,
that's a
and
whole other.
that is an interesting show. That is a very interesting show.
I mean, that's all speculation on my part. It
Yeah.
feels like .NET has reached a point now where Java was at one point. This idea that I can have this lightweight runtime that could run across all different devices.
Well, imagine if they get .NET Native going.
And that's
really
it.
going on. We've seen the demo, but what if it
I think that, to me, this is a shot in the arm in the .NET world. Because the bigger problem with .NET is it's very easy to get stagnant, right? If you're just still writing web forms in SQL Server, that to me, that's a poor career choice.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, there's EF Core, maybe. I don't know how much I care about EF, but
I think next week may be a good idea just to focus on MVC and ASP.NET Core. Just talk about it, what it is, and maybe what some of the differences. If I'm going to adopt Core versus Full, is there a difference, right? If I'm going to write a new web API function or I'm going to write a new MVC app, like, am I just basically writing the same thing and it compiles to different things, or is there conscious things I need to do that I'm going to be in my face aware of?
Yeah.
At least that's what I think makes sense.
do you
Chris, you're already uploaded here completely?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
do you want me to give this show a shot like on Thursday or something? I can't work on it tomorrow, but maybe Thursday. Unless you're going to do it.
Yes, please. No,
I'll try.
I've got.
I
Yeah, I got
have a
to
lot
focus
going
on the lynda.com course. That is my primary focus right now. And then I've got a baby on the way, and I've got Tech Bash.
Yep. I'm just saying I can't. I know for sure tomorrow's out. Maybe
Yeah.
Thursday night I can start on it.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that. And then after Tech Bash, I'm not committing to anything for a long time, and this show will be the only thing.
It's all right.
I say that now, and then we'll see by the end of the year what. What?
Then you're going to come to their user group after that?
Oh, well, no. I mean, I'll do that. That's doing user group presentations. Nothing. Prepare for that 2 days earlier.
Yeah, there's a lot I want to do. I've been doing a lot of JavaScript lately. I want to do F# on .NET Core. That's just personal stuff that I want to do.
That's interesting. That's awesome.
So, anyways, yeah, I felt like as we were putting together notes, like, why don't we just record?
Yeah,
Let's it'll be that bad.
Let's start doing that more and more.
Just hit the record button and see where it goes.
Yes. Why not?
It's fine
For
with
this
me.
one, it wasn't so bad because we're kind of introducing it. But yeah, well, like you said, I think, Todd, you're right. If we zero in on MVC, there's a lot there. There's MVC, there's Web API. We can have a whole discussion. Why does anybody care about server side?
Yep.
Well, it's server side is exactly what server is supposed to be. Services. Nothing else. take data in, do some shit, send it back. Let the client do the client. Good old client server.
Oh, and we got to 56 minutes unedited.
Yeah.
No, we
got in under an hour.
We hit it right on the sweet spot, I think.
That's freaking awesome. Great job, guys. Welcome back.
So, all right, we'll see you in 3 months. We can record another good one.
All right.
Actually, no, I know what it is. We need to talk about Mr. Robot for about 20 minutes ahead of time. You're fired.
Yeah.
So, Chris, that's your other assignment. You need to watch a few more episodes of Mr. Robot.
I'll try and get moving. I don't think it's horrible to put a few minutes into other stuff. I mean, heck, other shows, the show starts off and you hear about remodeling their house or whatever.
You know what? In all seriousness, I've been working on my deck a lot lately. I've been considering leading off with that. I'm being dead serious.
So, do you have a Docker container for your deck? Come on.
Yeah.
I think a Docker show. I'd really like to play more with Docker. It's interesting that you installed Docker for Windows, and I was just spitballing, thinking out loud. I was thinking, do I really want to do that? Why don't I just create a Linux VM and do all my Docker in there? But there's something to. You mentioned something interesting that sounds like you couldn't do. Is if you go with the Docker for Windows route, you linked a folder. What did you say again? You linked a folder to the Windows side so you could do your Visual Studio work.
Yeah, well, it's the same again. It's just the cool thing about Docker is when you go online and you look at Docker commands, it's cross-platform, right? So you'll be running those same commands in Windows as you are in OS X as you are in Ubuntu, right? And so including the mapping. So you map a folder from your local drive to directly into the container. And so when the container is looking at it, it looks like a local thing, right? But it's really mapped to that. So then you open up, I do it in Visual Studio Code. I don't use Visual Studio, but I open up that local folder on my local hard drive, my real hard drive, in Visual Studio Code. I hit save in the container, it refreshes, and it's served.
That's cool.
So, yeah, so there's a .NET watcher that watches that, right, and restarts the process.
Let me interrupt you guys real quick. I thought we were saving things as FLAC files. Is that correct? Okay. Because Chris uploaded Wave.
I'll go save it again.
Okay. I was making sure I didn't make a mistake.
Yeah, no, I'm actually converting. I'm compressing mine right now because my recorder records in Wave. And I just gotta say it again. I love my Surface Book. It's amazing.
I'm glad you do.
I love it. I love it.
I thought about
except I got it's on the right hand side of the screen. It started like getting yellow blobs.
That's what that guy complained about.
When it gets hot, yeah.
He said the colors are off. I hate it. I'm throwing it out.
Yeah. Well, I'm returning mine to Best Buy and I'm getting a brand new one.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a 17-inch Lenovo Ultrabook purely because it's an i7 and a GeForce 730, I think, which I actually play a lot of games on it, but then I also do Unity demos and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely interested in laptops with discrete GPUs, but I'm kind of, like most people, don't care. The one thing that I have learned about shopping for a laptop, though, is when you go for beefy laptops, is one thing, this happened to me on a laptop years and years and years ago, is sure, the laptop specs super, super beefy, but the laptop didn't run very cool, so the i7 itself would start throttling, and the GeForce chip itself would start throttling, so you might as well have had an i3. And so you almost have to do a little research and see what people are saying, like they bring the laptop home, they start benching it, and saying, like, this isn't running faster than an i3, what's the deal? Oh, well, it turns out the CPU is protecting itself.
Yeah, no, you just got to sit it on top of an ice cube and run it. And hope for the best.
Ice cube.
That's .NET Core Wave. What? Where's my...
TJ,
black. There it is.
You uploaded a Wave file, too.
No, I canceled it. I deleted it.
Okay, because it's what up here now.
Is it? Yeah, I'll delete that then. Oh, look at that. I did.
I noticed this because my thing has a different icon than yours, guys.
Yeah, I'm getting rid of the.
Google Drive actually recognizes the type. It's kind of cool. Alrighty, we get an aim for Monday or Tuesday next week. Or what's the story?
Let's shoot for Monday. I would love to get on a real schedule and start advertising that schedule. Even literally like start pitching it in the show, right? Like every Monday night at 10 o'clock or whatever. Like we turn it on and we start recording. And come join us.
Come join us for the fun.
It'd be really cool if we could link from staticvoidpodcast.com to the video or like host it on there somehow.
You
That'd
mean
be really cool.
You mean like what
You could definitely
live.asp.net does?
Yeah.
I think that source code's available if you want to look at what he did.
Oh, you wouldn't just have an embedded link to YouTube? You'd run something else?
It's not one link.
When the thing goes live, it's like if you're on live.net, when they switch live, this website subtly changes, but you're right, you do click on, it becomes embedded, you click on it, and then it starts playing right in front of you. And then if you say, well, forget it, I'm going to click through, you can eventually get to the place where you used to do Q&A, but I think they gave up on that and started saying go to Gitter. I'm not sure.
And the other people I see that are using Hangouts, when you watch some streams, it's just available, and you can jump around if you're like behind 15 minutes. You can jump back live, not live.
Yeah.
And they just have it embedded in the webpage.
Actually, the creators of Jabber said go to Getter?
I think so, but I'm not positive.
Okay. I love Jabber.
There's like 4 million. There's the ASP.NET Jabber. There's the ASP.NET Gitter. There's a lot of places, and I think the scary thing is I think David Fowler monitors them all.
It's
his job.
Sorry. There's an ASP.NET /.NET Slack, and I swear I see him on all of them.
Yeah.
So, all right, what's past one?
ASP.NET Slack.
Yeah,
I can literally go there right now.
Let me see if I can find it.
There's a core Slack meeting.
It's aspnetcore.slack.com. It's a real thing. And you will find Fowler there, just as you will find him on Jabber and on Gitter. Unless they've abandoned.
All right, gentlemen. Good show as always. I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
See ya.